And it's incredible because it feels like, and there was this one night at the retreat where the energy in the room was so palpable, of all of us there. I mean, it really felt like you might as well have been in a spaceship, and you were somewhere else because, we weren't on Earth anymore. It was the energy in that room it was the whole room was vibrating with this palpable spiritual energy. And even Muji said, this is, right now, the most spiritual place on Earth.
On Earth, yeah.
And you felt it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Cultivating You podcast with Anthony Dwayne.
All right, beautiful people, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another amazing episode of the Cultivating You podcast. I am your host, Anthony Dwayne, and today I have another amazing interview for you. Before I do jump right into that, though, I would like to say thank you to everybody who has been tuning in, all of the positive feedback I've been getting. I really appreciate it. Appreciate all the love. I have noticed that a lot of the viewers who are tuning in every week aren't necessarily subscribers. So if you are not a subscriber, please go click that bell, subscribe to the Cultivating You podcast if it's helped you in any way. If you like what you're hearing, if you know somebody who you think this podcast might help, please share the episode, like the episode, subscribe. Like I said, once again, I appreciate all the love. But now back to business. So today I have a wonderful guest on. I would say he's a friend, but I consider him now a little bit more of a brother. We've been through a lot over the past couple of years. He is a business owner. He is an all-around powerful spiritual being. He is a self-taught mycologist and just a really good guy. So everybody welcome Tristen Trychon. How you doing, Tristen?
Wow, man. Thanks for that amazing introduction and amazing intro. It's great to be here. Really appreciate you having me on. Been super excited to do this with you. Heard a lot about the podcast, and so it's great to be here.
Right on, man. Yeah. No, I'm super excited about it. When I thought about who I wanted to be on the podcast, you were just kind of a no-brainer for me. We always have great conversation. I can really dive deep into subjects with you that I really can't talk with a lot of other people. You know what I'm saying? So it's always great for me to have my spiritual and, psychedelic psychonaut friends around that we can really go down the rabbit hole with.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, so I'm super stoked. And, to be honest with you, you've had a really big impact on my life. I will say that we met back in the day 4 or 5 years ago at the dispensary. Selling weed and cracking up and just really having a good time at the dispensary. And I felt like I was kind of coming into my own little spiritual journey, and it just kind of so happened we collided around that time. And you've kind of helped me out a lot with, breaking down ideas and concepts and just really talking through things that I may have been just exploring with spirituality. And also with psychedelics. I mean, mycology in general, you really introduced me to home mycology and being able to do it on your own. And that was very enlightening, you know what I'm saying? And so I'm very appreciative to you for all of that. And one of the things that really, really stood out to me when I met you, and actually I don't even think I learned this fact about you till we knew each other for maybe a year or two. But that you actually, as a young man, kind of just packed up and took off and went to, I believe it was Portugal, and really started to delve in and dive in and discover more about yourself and your own spirituality. And you sat with gurus and I just always thought that was such an amazing and most intriguing part about you, because I'm just one of those people who I've always been fascinated with that world. I love the old documentaries, the old 60s and 70s documentaries where people were going to the East and, meditating, and, the gurus were coming to the West, and it was like a big movement, So I always thought that was just a really cool aspect about you, but it's something I don't know much about. And that's kind of like the first question I really wanted to dive in with that was like, how was that like? You know what I'm saying? What was that experience like? Like it must have been amazing.
Yeah. First off, I just want to say it really means a lot that I've made such a big impact on your life. I mean, I think just to hear that from such a close friend, and someone that I too would kind of call a brother at this point in my life, really means a lot. So thank you for expressing that, for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
But I think Portugal was incredible. I mean, my spiritual journey started off with weed, actually, interestingly enough. I'd gotten super high after a 2-week tea break in the garage one day after taking a giant bong rip. And then it was at that point I had this crazy spiritual experience. And it's kind of fascinating because I would say some of the most impactful spiritual experiences that I've had in my life, interestingly enough, have been after a long tea break with weed, and then going back and smoking again, and it having an intense psychedelic effect.
Yeah.
And my introduction to Muji, to the guru, was a kind of similar situation. I just moved out to Arizona. I was smoking weed one night, and my mom had actually sent me a YouTube video. She said, "Hey, I know you're interested in enlightenment. You might want to check this out." And I put this YouTube video on, and it absolutely sucked me in. It was Muji's YouTube video. I have it right here, actually. I just want to pull up the name, not to plug it, but it says, "A must-see, a most important video on enlightenment for anyone and everyone." And that video single-handedly changed the trajectory of my life from that point on. Okay. It was the most wild experience. I can vividly remember sitting there that night and watching this. And after all of my life sort of feeling this search for something more, here was this person that was saying, and in my heart was making me, it was bringing up a feeling that I'd never felt before, that felt like this was the answer to a big question. And from that moment on, I became completely obsessed with spirituality in a way. It was, it completely took my life over. I mean, I was probably 16 years old, and it became my sole focus at that point. I went from being someone who, my sole purpose was to get home at the end of the day so I could play Destiny on my Xbox and my 55-inch TV, to within a month of watching that video, I think I'd sold all of my belongings. I'd sold my TV, I'd sold my Xbox, I'd sold my computer, and it wasn't too long after that I booked tickets to go on a 10-day silent retreat out in Portugal.
That's amazing.
With Muji.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really the beginning of that journey.
That's pretty wild, man. Like, those are things that I think people fantasize about. I sure fantasize about, like, just picking up, packing all my shit, or at least selling all my shit off and just taking off, So I find that pretty remarkable that you actually did that. And that's why it's always blown my mind. And one thing I did want to kind of backstep on is I don't think people really realize, and maybe they do, but it's not much talked about, but how cannabis actually is very psychedelic. You know what I'm saying? And how it can really really launch you there, especially like edibles, how they're so strong, but even just flower itself. I mean, I've smoked cannabis that has put visuals behind my eyelids when I close my eyes, and I've watched colors change, and it really blew my mind the first time that it happened. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, so, and I know you've had some pretty remarkable experiences on, you know, camping and things like that. But so you went to Portugal. Was Muji at the silent retreat?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so it was actually his retreat.
It was his
Okay.
his retreat.
Okay,
His
so
silent
you
retreat
get
at
there
the ashram.
and you get there and you stay for 10 days, or do you end up staying for much, much longer? Is that?
So typically you go and you stay for 10 days. I mean, that's what most people do. You know, it's a 10-day silent retreat. You take a little bit of time off work. You go, and then, you know, you come back and you live your life. I ended up staying for 2 months.
Oh, okay.
In Portugal.
Okay.
So, and we can get into, if you'd like, we can get into the silent retreat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Itself
Yep.
a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I mean, we can. So, I guess if we're trying to get back into actually meeting Muji and getting to the silent retreat, I would have to say meeting Muji was. It was absolute, and I have to say this to preface this and say that I'm very skeptical. You know, I'm not somebody who is super willy-nilly. You know, I don't believe in anything freely. You know, I'm super skeptical of anything I'm diving into. I'm super skeptical of gurus and of charlatans and the whole nine.
Same.
Yeah, I think we kind of see eye to eye on that, to where we go into situations with an open mind, but also, you know, just very aware that not everything is as it seems. But anyways, going back to actually meeting Muji, I was absolutely blown away by. I just want to make sure that we actually get this right here.
No, yeah,
So I'm sure you can edit this around a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think. Now, let me just stop you real quick, because I think what you're trying to touch on, and this is actually a question that I had for you, is because we often hear that these gurus have this presence about them, right?
Yes.
So they kind of emanate this aura of whatever it is, love, or just being very present, or and just being here now and things like that. And
Yes.
it's probably their field, their magnetic field and stuff like that. So yeah, it had to have been pretty, maybe intense or maybe calming. Yeah. What was it?
Yeah, it was because when you're watching it from a video,
Yeah.
you know, you have no idea that that's a thing. And so then when you get there and for the first time that you get close to him, it's bizarre. There is this presence that just emanates off of him. And I mean, the best way that I would describe it is just like this feeling of pure love.
Wow.
And, you know, and again, I don't want to get too out there, but it really feels like this presence of pure divinity.
Okay.
And there's no real way to describe that, but it is the most bizarre thing. It's like you've walked into a room and Jesus is there.
Right.
And you can just tell, like, this is something else.
Right.
You know, this is like the real deal. There's an energy to this that I've never experienced in my life, and it's tangible. And the closer you get to him, the more you feel it.
Right.
It is so. It's like a magnet.
It's a field, yeah.
It's a field.
Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, I had
And
this
it's more intense towards the center.
towards the center of this
Yeah.
field. Yes, and you can directly feel it coming off of this being. You
Yeah.
know, you don't even want to call it a him. It's this being that's just this pure energy is just vibrating off of them, and it's, you know, it just sucks you in.
Yeah.
And it really feels like the vibration or the energy of the universe.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're just, all of a sudden you became in sync with the vibration of the universe, and it just magnetizes you into nothing. It's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I remember distinctly this one time. This was actually in India when I went to see him in India. This one time, that he walked by me, and it was in the mess hall where we were eating, and he just, happened to just, as he's walking by, just taps me on the arm, and he's doing it to everybody. But the moment he touched me, just love, just pure love, just coursed through my whole body. It was really bizarre. I've never experienced anything like it. And I don't follow Muji like I do. But nowadays that I've taken a step back, there is pieces of me that wonder. I almost have to wonder, is it because everyone is giving him their energy that makes him so energetic?
Right.
A little skepticism starts to come in. Is it actually this energy coming off of him, or is it almost like this vampire effect, that because so many people are worshiping him and they're giving their energy to him, that he has become this like this sponge,
right,
so to speak, of everybody else's energy.
Yeah, so that's interesting because I've thought about that too, and I think that's one of that's really an intrigue, I think, about spirituality for me, is like this path of enlightenment. And I feel like in some sense that's where we're headed, right? We're trying to head to that point where we can be love and we can have our own energy field. And I know at times during meditations I've gotten pretty deep and felt my own field coming off of myself as well.
Yes.
But what's really the effect? Is it like, is it like you said, is it people, are we all charging each other? You know what I'm saying? And he's just somehow magnetizing it and retransmitting it back out to us? Or is it that he has journeyed somewhere, maybe in the depths of his mind or just in his experience, where he's like dipped his toe into that, all encompassing energetic water? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, and where has he been, and like, how do I get there? You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah. Oh man, I wonder that too, because it's, and what's really fascinating to me now is my perspective is that Muji's not even the real deal. I don't think he's truly enlightened,
right,
so to speak. But what's fascinating to me is that someone who I don't necessarily think is the real deal can still have such a divine energy.
There's levels to this shit.
There's levels to this. Absolutely. It's not just black and white. There's absolutely these like levels, and there's certain places we can go. And I love that you said the sort of the depths of the waters of energy. Right. It's
it's hard to fathom, and it's very intriguing to me, even more so now hearing this. I would like to, I'm the same way as you. I'm very skeptical about the whole guru thing, you know what I'm saying? And like, I want to meet these people, but it's almost like, do I go and seek this out, or can I try and find this within? And this is where like the mind gets a little bit weird. It's like, maybe it's ego or something, where you're almost too prideful to go and seek someone out, or, because I'd have to imagine that this person being on such a level is a little bit intimidating to us other people as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, like maybe even almost makes us a little bit of self-conscious because we feel on a lower tier or something. You know what I'm saying? But that's almost like the thing you have to try and transcend, is like, no, that we're all there. Like, you just got to tap into it, and it takes time. Like what we were saying, like before the podcast, about just people in day-to-day life, where there's just something about this person, and maybe it's just the years that they've acquired and the experiences that they've gone through, but they've started to strip away and like layers, and they're letting go of a lot of things that we haven't yet. You know what I'm saying? And they just have this eminence of like an elder or something that has a power that is really comes down to just practice, like that lesson of mastery, like the 10,000 hours. Some people have 20,000 hours, if they've been practicing it for long enough. And when you get to that level, it really turns something on. I think it does anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and I got a chance when I was there too to actually to talk with him too during satsang.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do during the silent retreat is you do satsang two times a day.
Yeah.
And satsang means being with truth.
Okay.
And so 2 times a day you go essentially, and it's in the ashram hall. It's you know, the big yurt building essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone goes in and they will ask him a question. You know, so it'll go on about 2 hours.
Okay.
Where people go up with the microphone, they'll ask him a question, and then you know, he'll answer. And so I actually got to go up, and I got to sort of to talk to him up on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And this was actually after I had been at the ashram for about a month. So I'd stayed past the silent retreat.
Okay.
And you know, it's funny because nowadays I think it was probably my ego that wanted to do this, but I was getting ready to leave the next day because I wanted to go and explore Portugal.
Okay.
Because the whole point to me about, you know, spirituality is, you know, it can't just be stuck in the ashram. You have to be able to take your spirituality into the real world.
Yeah.
And so I was going up there to you know, tell him, you know, I'm leaving tomorrow, and had this sort of interaction with him where I told him, you know, I think I'm going tomorrow. I'm not quite sure, you know, and I don't know where I'm going next. I don't know what's going to happen next. And we talked like that for a minute, and I was just sort of in this super blissful state. And there's actually a video of it still on YouTube of me up there talking with Muji.
Okay.
It's really cool.
Yeah, we'll have to check it out.
Yeah, 100%. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was actually really amazing because, you know, when he was answering me, he, you know, looks out at everyone. He goes, you know, this is someone who's getting it. And he's like, this one's on the path. He's like, this one's understanding. You know, it's really cool.
In his very Muji,
yes,
even monotone, calm voice.
Super monotone, super calm.
He is super calming.
Yeah, super calming, man. Amazing to listen to. You know, and so yeah, and it was this really cool experience. You know, and it's wild because I don't even necessarily believe it. You know, that's true, but still to have someone like that, you know, telling you that, you know, like you're on the right path.
Yeah.
And like he doesn't say that to many people. And even after the silent retreat ended, it was really bizarre. I had people coming up to me because I went up there and I talked one time about something else. Mm-hmm. And people were coming up to me afterwards and they were like, I'm so glad that you shared. It was so good to hear from you. And like, and it was really weird, man. People were, and afterwards too was incredible. After the silent retreat, when everyone finally gets a chance to talk again and to the amount of love that everyone expresses with each other, you've never experienced it like anything close to that here in the US or
I bet
anywhere else. It's amazing. And the amount of genuine love, I mean, random people just going up to each other and deeply hugging each other for like a minute at a time, and it is real.
So while you're in the silent retreat, are you also cut off basically of contact with people? Like you're kind of isolated a little bit.
Yep, you're supposed to be not reading, not doing anything.
So I can imagine what you're saying too, because it reminds me of fasting. So like when I've gone up to 5 days of just pure water fast and 3 and 5 days, and when you deprive yourself of food for that long, all you've had is water, maybe some tea, and then you prepare this meal for yourself at the end of it to break the fast, and it doesn't matter what you're having. Like you have to ease back into fasting because it can really mess your stomach up if you just start eating a lot of food. But I just remember having like a very simple salad to get my stomach going again. And I bit into this little cherry tomato, and it was the most like exquisite cherry tomato I've ever had in my life. So I could imagine that, like after you've not been talking and you've not had human contact after 5 days and just really been with yourself, it's probably pretty amazing to have a hug, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
And on top of that, you're in this place.
And have a conversation.
Yeah, and have a conversation. And it's not only that, you're also in a place to where every single person there is there for the same reason.
Right.
And the reason, as far as we're all concerned when we're there, is the most important thing in the entire universe. Nothing matters more than the reason that we are at that retreat, which is to find our self, our true self. I'm not a huge fan anymore of the word enlightenment, but ultimately it's like that's what you're going there for. And it's the highest truth, like the highest thing that you could seek out as a human being. And every single person there is there for the same exact reason.
Right.
And it's incredible because it feels like, and there was this one night at the retreat where the energy in the room was so palpable, of all of us there. I mean, it really felt like you might as well have been in a spaceship, and you were somewhere else because, we weren't on Earth anymore. It was the energy in that room it was the whole room was vibrating with this palpable spiritual energy. And even Muji said, this is, right now, the most spiritual place on Earth.
On Earth. Yeah.
And you felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you felt like you were there for that.
Yeah.
It was, whew.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those experiences have to do something to you in your brain, deep down within. They do change your life forever, because once you feel something you've never felt before, it's almost like you can't go back.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like
100%.
you've experienced this intense amount of love, and it's like, there's more levels to this. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we said earlier, there's levels to it, but it's like a field.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's like a field. Yeah.
That's really awesome, man. Thanks for sharing that with all of us, with me, because, even just spiritual experiences alone in themselves, like, they're meant for us. You know what I'm saying? They really are meant for us, and they're really, truly special. And, so to kind of let people in on a personal experience is awesome. So I thank you for doing that. I do kind of want to switch gears a little bit, not too far off base, but around in the same arena. And it has a lot to do with spirituality, and I think it's one of the draws for me that I really love, the imagery and the art and the unfoldingness of the imagery of Buddhism and Hinduism and all of these different belief systems, like a mandala, like this right here. You know what I'm saying? It's like an infinite unfolding lotus flower. And the experiences that people have with meditation and spiritual experience in general is it's created that imagery around its belief system, and it's almost psychedelic, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's really, and people are reaching these psychedelic states with no substances, with just discipline and centeredness, and finding calm within themselves. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so like we were saying earlier, or I guess what we implied earlier, is that sometimes these substances like cannabis and mushrooms and all this other stuff, they can almost catapult you into intense spiritual experience faster than you would just by sitting and meditating in a cave for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? It can just kind of launch you right there, then and there. And so has psychedelics and other stuff like that, do you hold that separate, or is that part of your path? You know what I'm saying? Is it something that you hold near and dear to your heart? Obviously it is, but like, do you kind of equate those things to being very similar?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't want to say that psychedelics and spirituality necessarily go hand in hand,
right? But
I think the two definitely complement each other to a degree. Mm-hmm. But ultimately it all depends on where you're at, though. Yeah. Because I think that's the biggest determining factor, because ultimately the two are very separate experiences. Mm-hmm. I think. And while psychedelics can definitely catapult you towards a spiritual path,
Right.
for sure, I think the psychedelic experience and the true like spiritual experience are two very different things.
Okay.
I think the psychedelic experience gets so while incredible can be is very convoluted by our own mind.
Okay.
And it can become very chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the spiritual experience is more similar to like the lotus flower that you're describing. It's an unfolding, and more so it's a ripping away. It's a everything sheds off, everything comes off, and with true spirituality, it ultimately I think comes down to kind of nothing.
Right.
And this sort of very simplistic state. Whereas psychedelics can get very chaotic and they get really out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, I've had some incredible spiritual experiences on psychedelics, and then I've just had some crazy, wild, out there UFO experiences on psychedelics.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think they can be incredibly important.
Yeah.
To use if you're on a path or you're on a spiritual journey. I mean, 100%. If they're used safely, at least.
Yeah, and I think when I asked that question, I more or less maybe projected my own thinking onto it a little bit, because you're right, it is dependent on where everybody is at individually. For me, spirituality is in the way that I am kind of currently understanding things, and my dive into like esoterics, which you're familiar with the book The Kybalion. The first law of the Kybalion, out of the 7 laws, is the all is mental, like the universe is mind, and what I've always taken away from that is that, again, I'm a skeptic too. I was a pretty ardent atheist for a good 9 years or so, and in some instances I still have not really accepted that there's a God, I guess. But to me, if there is this God, this infinite energy, we are the mind of God. Like, we are the manifestation of God's mind, and as he or it thinks, it is so. Like, it creates it's creating something in the universe, and their universe is so expansive and infinite that there's so many possibilities, and that's not even to talk about multiple other universes that may be out there. So there's all this stuff popping in and out of reality, and we essentially are God becoming conscious of itself through organisms, and God finding itself, and that's like, it's almost like there is no good and there is no bad. It's just all experience. Mm-hmm. And when I put that down into like the microcosm of humans, and if we have that essence, that energy within us, then we are also a bit of God creating things. We're manifesting things into our own reality, and we're creating our own reality. And so spirituality to me is like, we are finding ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we're learning about ourselves. And I think that psychedelics, if used correctly, can absolutely help you find yourself and learn about yourself in a lot of different ways. So I guess that's where I was kind of coming at it from, that question and that viewpoint. And I don't even really know where I was really getting at with that, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, 100%. Yeah. I mean, and keep in mind, like, I don't know anything either.
Right.
And I think the interesting thing is, the more psychedelics I've taken, really, mm-hmm. and the more that I've gotten into spirituality, and the more that's evolved in my life, the more I realize I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Whereas I used to think, it's all love and it's all bliss, and the universe is just pure love. And as I've gotten older, I've just realized, like, I don't know anything. I don't know jack shit. And some of my psychedelic experiences have kind of slapped me in the face with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Well, how about a trip report?
Yeah, man. I mean, I can go into the first time I did DMT.
Okay.
And that was that was my first real rude awakening.
Was it?
With psychedelics? 100%. It kicked my ass.
Yes, it can do that for sure.
Yes, and I think I made the fatal mistake of thinking I know my shit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was probably 20 at the time.
Right.
And I went in to the experience thinking that, I've got some psychedelic experience with mushrooms and LSD. And,
Sure.
when you go into a trip, you want to set an intention.
Exactly.
And so the intention that I set for the DMT gods was show me the ultimate truth. Just give it to me straight. What is the ultimate truth? Put me in the state.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What is the secret of the universe? I'm ready for it. In my mind, it's all love, baby. It's all bliss, baby. It's all good.
It's all good.
It's all good. And they're like, oh, you want to know what the source of the universe is? You want to get to the center of it? Oh, okay. All right, we'll show you where everything comes from. You want to know where it all comes from? And I took this hit of DMT, man, and I ended up in, it was terrifying because I ended up in absolute nothingness. It was my reality boxed in,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in, I couldn't even call it pitch black because there was zero.
Mm-hmm.
It was, whatever the state is, where nothing moves, like the temperature, where everything freezes and completely stops, or there's nothing, that's where I was. And I remember, and the thing is too, is in that state, time completely disappears.
Doesn't exist.
It does not exist. And, it's funny talking about it from a perspective with time. But when you're in that state of no time, it's fucked.
It's bizarre.
It's bizarre. And especially when you're in that state and there is nothing there, I just started repeating to myself, love, love, love. Because that's what I was going in looking for. That's what I was going in expecting. That's what I thought I was going to get. And when I got there and there was no love there at all, I was desperately looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then at a certain point, I did see this light. And, and it was also super bizarre because there was this light that came in, and then it suddenly felt like I was maybe in a hospital room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cliche if you've heard the stories, but there was this giant praying mantis creature looking down at me. And it was very confused as to why I was there.
Yeah.
It was like, what are you doing here? And I saw it, we looked at each other for a minute, and all of a sudden it was like, whoop, and I got launched back into my body.
Uh-huh.
And when I got launched back in, whatever food I had in my stomach got launched
Oh
right
my
up.
God, dude.
And so I came back and I went, whoop, whoop. And I remember I just said to my ex-girlfriend was there at the time and went, bucket.
Oh my God.
And she was like, no, it's okay, just let it out. And I right over the carpet.
You just Ralphed everywhere.
Ralphed all over the carpet coming back from that one,
Oof.
man.
Yeah.
And that was my first real kick in the nards from the psychedelic
That
gods.
sounds like it.
That said, hey, you thought you know something? Well, guess what? You don't know a thing.
Man, that is intense.
Yeah.
No, when you're talking about that nothingness, it strikes me because it's something that as a young kid, when I used to lay in bed and used to think a lot of crazy shit, I would think about death a lot, and I don't know why, but I would say I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I thought I was wondering about heaven and hell, and I was laying in bed and I was like, what if you just die and it's nothing? And it's absolutely, the way I was picturing it as a child was that I just was basically eyeballs in infinite blackness forever. And I was going to be conscious of it. And I was just going to be there forever with nothing. And I was like, it was the most terrifying thing that I ever thought of. And it sent me into a panic attack as a kid. And I remember I had to go crawl to mommy's room because I was fucking scared. You know what I'm saying? But it's weird that you say that, and it kind of takes me back there because it is very intense. And, you know, my own experiences with DMT are very much that, being stripped away of your body and your senses, and you have no idea of that you even have a body or that you're even a human. It's just pure consciousness and I don't know what you're experiencing, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, very, very intense. I would say even with a mushroom trip that I had one time, after a technique that you showed me, which is lemon tech, that really gave me a pretty intense mushroom trip. And I experienced a death and a rebirth, which was very, very bizarre. I basically got to this point, you know, there's a lot leading up to this point, but I basically found myself floating on a planet with no atmosphere. I felt like I was in the vacuum of space. It was really, really crazy. And in this vision I was having, I was like an ancient Native American. I had like a full headdress and everything, and I was dying. And I remember just looking at my hands, and involuntarily, like I wasn't doing this, but my hands just came over my head. And I watched as my hands turned to stone, or the rock that I was on, or whatever the planet I was on, a moon or something. And half of my body was embedded into the planet, and half of my body was coming out of it. And I was hardening over, like I was becoming part of the rock. And I watched in absolute like horror as I seen the sun in the distance, and I seen two other planets coming together and colliding. Like amazing visual experience that I don't think has ever been replicated since in my head. But yeah, it's very intense, bro.
That's great.
And being in the vacuum of space, it was like, you can't, I guess I couldn't hear sound, but I could hear the collision. It was like, like it was just the weirdest, most bizarre sound.
Yeah.
And I was laying in my bed, and I basically died at that point. It was like I was alone in the vastness of space, dying alone. And it was horrifying and beautiful at the same time, because it was just such a visceral experience.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, I just remember like coming to, and my body like arched off of the bed like Exorcist, and I was just like like freaking out, and I was like, oh my God, and I launch up, and I'm just like, what the fuck? like the craziest experience ever happened to me, you know? And just the things that these compounds can do to you are just truly phenomenal, like very, very intense stuff. And we've taken quite a few rides together now on this little trip of life too, and those have been really, really impactful on me as well. Like, you know, the Cosmic Boat Crew. I don't think you'll ever get that.
The Cosmic Boat Crew.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever. Well, we got to bring the Cosmic Boat Crew back together again.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I'm saying?
Great.
That was an amazing experience.
It'd be a blast. Even just you, me, Sebastian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It'd be great.
We'll set it up here pretty soon, because it'll be a great time.
It'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'm super stoked about the revolution of psychedelics and the state that we're in now, where it's, you know, where it's coming to, you know, it's more of a form of medicine, you know, it's being congratulated for its therapeutic events and helping people with PTSD and addictions and things like that. And it's just a really exciting time to be alive. You know what I'm saying? Especially with that all coming in. And I really, truly think that they're going to be an amazing part of the mental health revolution in the next 10 years or so. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see where it's going to go. I mean, ultimately it's, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's great talking about it. I love how much publicity it's getting. It's Joe Rogan's talking about it. Anyone who's anyone is talking about psychedelics and the sort of psychedelic revolution. And yet, you know, it's such a slow process, though, when you're dealing with the United States government. and actually trying to get them to say, hey, it's okay.
Right.
Like, we're going to let you guys go for it. I mean, I think the cat's out of the bag.
Absolutely.
And I think it's going to happen. It's just, when, and then how is it going to be too, is what is the process going to be like? And, most likely it will involve that you have to do it with therapy when it does get approved. And so I guess my biggest concern is that there's going to be a lot of people who need it, who don't financially have the resources to access it, because
Absolutely. That's very true.
It's going to be cost prohibitive if that's the route they go, which I think is the right route. I don't necessarily see a better option except for maybe one day fully legalizing it.
Right.
But, I think that's definitely a huge concern is,
I think you're right about that too, because even now, like, there is already psychedelic treatments available. There's, even here in Tucson, they have ketamine, ketamine therapy sessions, and those I've looked into them, and they're $1,000. You know what I'm saying?
Jesus.
It's like anybody who's really struggling, they're and insurance isn't going to cover that. Like, they're not covering ketamine therapy for people, So it'll be a great step forward when it is legitimized as a official treatment, and people will have access to it through insurance. And maybe right off the bat, insurance will cover like 50% of it, and you got to come up with the other half. And that's a start, but it really is part of the scenario that's really unfortunate for a lot of people who need it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I would love to see like a nonprofit organization built, or some way around that, to where it's like it's a service that can be offered through this nonprofit organization that helps people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that's an avenue that I think people will definitely do that, especially if it's in the spirit of actually helping people and not fucking just profiting off of these natural God-given remedies. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's 100%. I think that's my biggest fear about this whole thing, is that it's just going to be capitalized on so hardcore. And it's not to say it's a bad thing, but when you have pharma coming in and taking psilocybin compounds and restructuring them so that they're giving you that psychedelic effect, but they're taking away all these other little things that are naturally within in the fungus itself, and they're creating their own copyrights on these pills, and then they're giving them to people, and then people are going to be able to access them, and it's really going to be like bastardizing it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%.
And yeah, so that's an unfortunate aspect that I can kind of foresee. I don't know if that's going to actually happen, but I would almost guarantee it will.
Well, I think the best company right now that's doing this work is MAPS, and MAPS is trying to go the route that you just described.
Right.
I think they're trying to do it nonprofit. They're trying to do it as much as they can donation only. I think they're discussing going public.
Yeah.
And bringing in.
Actually, I did just read that. Yeah.
Yes. And so, but ultimately, what they would like to do is to get it funded. But I mean, that's the problem is they're looking at, they need $75 million to get it FDA approved.
Right.
So unless someone's coming up with $75 million just to help them and say, hey, here's 75 mil for a good cause, which I wish someone would do. Then you have to find another avenue, another route to go, which then becomes that for-profit route, which is.
And I think luckily MAPS has access to probably a lot of millionaires who are actually into the psychedelic world. So they got to be they're probably making progress through that and becoming more well-known, I guess. But yeah, it's going good. I think MDMA is in like the final stages of their testing and is pretty quick to getting that finalized. And I think that even psilocybin is now getting closer to being tested on like legally.
Much closer.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm super stoked.
Yeah, and microdosing too. I mean, has incredible medicinal benefits.
Yes.
I would think microdosing for nearly, maybe not curing, but significantly helping my Lyme disease.
Oh, okay,
And
yeah.
I used to have the absolute worst chronic back pain. I mean, for years, ever since I was a 12-year-old kid to the time that I was 22 or so. And the one thing that I found that helped my back pain more than anything was microdosing.
That blew my
was
mind when you told me
incredible.
about that. Like, I never
Yeah.
thought of pain management through microdosing.
Me neither.
Yeah.
100%. But I'd heard, and there was somebody who had Lyme disease, Paul Stamets, or it was another mycologist, who microdosed and was talking about the fact that because it will actually change your neural pathways, your neural pathways right now are ingrained to feel that pain.
Right.
When you start to microdose regularly, it will change those neural pathways around the pain.
That is quite
In a way,
amazing.
yes, and so you don't feel the pain anymore, or it will at least, yeah. I don't know how it works,
Right.
but that's what I heard, and I said, okay, I'll give it a try. I've got nothing to lose, and 3 months later, my back pain to this day is essentially gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that should encourage anybody who's really thinking about microdosing. And obviously, we're not wanting people to go out there and do anything illegal, but if you can find a way to alleviate some of your ailments or mental health issues or anything like that, I would say, be safe and give it a try, or at least, go to MAPS, like he was saying, and go and buy some of their products and donate to them, even if it's $5-10, and support the cause so that it becomes legal and we can get this stuff on the way. You know what I'm saying?
Could even look into signing up for one of their trials too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and even getting involved.
That would be cool.
Doing that, being a psychedelic guinea pig.
Oh yeah.
So
I think we're all up for that.
Yeah, I'll sign up for that. So I'm really excited to see where psychedelics will go medicinally, because I think there's so many avenues for it. Yeah,
Absolutely.
mental health, physical health, absolutely.
Right on, man. So with this being Cultivating You, I established this podcast and social page for the benefit of others. Essentially, I've gone through my own level of healing and personal growth and development over the years. And, although it's a little bit of progress, but I've just felt like I could help share my story and share stories like yours so that people can maybe take a few things away from it and enhance their lives, or, try something new, try something different, and experience their own, really flowering and flourishing in life. And another aspect of this podcast is business. And that's a development in our finances and our personal growth and everything like that. And I really wanted to have a little segment where we could talk about our experiences as business owners. If you don't know, myself and Tristen co-founded Mindshrooms, the mushroom grow kit company, and I have since stepped away from the business to follow my own path and going back to get my education. But Tristen here has taken full reins of the Mindshrooms business, and he's quite frankly doing an amazing job utilizing social media and really trying to get it to become a very organic growth as a mushroom would. You know what I'm saying? We're not trying to force this growth faster than it needs to happen, because everything happens in due time.
Love that.
And I just really wanted to see if we could maybe talk about our experiences over the last couple of years, because it was a pretty formidable last couple of years. I experienced probably a more exponential growth in the last 2 years than I had the previous 10. And because business is spiritual in itself, it forces you to grow. It's gonna ask you, are you creative enough to come up with a solution for this problem? Do you have what it takes? How do you get around this problem? What's going to happen here? So it really hits all your weak points, and it forces you to strengthen them, essentially. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, you know, if anybody's been in business 3, 4, 5+ years, this segment might not benefit you. Maybe it will. I don't know. Maybe it will benefit you. But I really would like for us to maybe get into it a little bit. For the people out there who are thinking about starting a business, maybe are afraid to pull that trigger. They're a little bit risk averse. They don't know, they got a family, or they're broke right now. They want to really do it, but they don't know how to start or what to do. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So maybe we could just go into a little bit about, you know, our road down that path. And funnily enough, on the way over here, I was thinking about this because I was like, well, it's been about 2 years, and I was like, it's May 20th. And I looked in my phone and I had written down our launch date for Mind Shrooms, and it was May 27th.
No way.
So literally a week from today will be the 2-year mark that's crazy. That Mind Shrooms has been added, and it's pretty remarkable because a lot of businesses fail within the first 2 years. You know what I'm saying? And it's still kicking, it's still going, and that this whole experience has been pretty remarkable. And I think it's kind of funny that we're pretty close to that date, and here we are meeting up to do this podcast and talk about it a little bit. But yeah, it's been awesome. I just remember the day you came up to me, and you're like, you want to fucking go in business? You want to go do this shit? You know what I'm saying? And it was just like on like Donkey Kong. And I don't know. To me, it was like, you know what? You just got to fucking do it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
It just happened.
Yeah.
I mean, you and me, we just went to work, and we actually made it happen.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the cool thing about us and about you in particular, that like I love about you is you're like, when you put your mind on something, like you're gonna make it happen, right? And you're serious about it. Like you're the real deal, you know. And so, thank you. Well, yeah, 100%. Yeah. So when we talked about that, and you know, it wasn't just a willy-nilly thing for either of us. It became a super serious thing that we became completely committed to. Mm-hmm. We spent 6 months just developing it. Right. I think.
Yeah, so, 5.
Yeah.
No, 6. Yeah. It was the end of May, because I think, you're right. We started in like January, like the beginning of January. Yeah. That year.
Just kind of getting it going.
Yeah, and it was a really odd and like uncomfortable experience too, because you're coming together with somebody and you're trying to develop ideas. And I just remember those first few times we met up on your apartment balcony, and we're just out there in the morning with notepads and books, and we're like, huh. Like saying probably the dumbest shit ever about we were already off in the future. We were already like, oh yeah, this is gonna be off, which is a good thing. But I think all of our expectations just completely got blown out of the water. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%. Which, to be honest, was probably a little bit more of a curse than anything. Yeah. You know, and I was just talking about this with someone the other day actually. Right. That when we launched, it was slow at first, but when it took off, it took off.
It fucking flew.
It flew. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I remember all of a sudden, and, you know, here we are working, you know, not quite minimum wage jobs, but we're maybe taking, you know, back then $1,600 home a paycheck, or, well, maybe how much to pay? Yeah, about.
Maybe that. Maybe that.
Yeah, maybe $1,500 or so a paycheck. And then all of a sudden we're seeing, you know, in a month's time, $15,000. Right. $20,000. $25,000. $28,000. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is it. Mm-hmm. I've never got to worry about money again in my life.
Made it to the big time, baby.
I made it to the big time. I hit the jackpot, baby. Woo! Yeah. You know, I'm set for life. This a money printer, son. Mm-hmm. And you know, and to be honest, that was probably the biggest downfall, because my expectations were set so high, and then, you know, what seemed like an astronomical amount of money to me at the time, $25,000. You know, I'm thinking I'm set for life. Then you start running the business and you don't realize how fast that goes. Right. And suddenly we're getting through a month that we just did $24,000, and we're down $2,000. Yep. And I'm looking around and I'm going, how in the fuck did we just pull in the $24,000 and we're somehow, it looks like we're -2. Yes. And that's when, you know, it became very real. And, it was sort of a wake up call of, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
This isn't a money printer. And on top of that, it really, especially nowadays, it's made me realize just how much of a baby a business is.
Right.
And it's
totally a baby. Yeah.
It's a baby, man.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't constantly take care of that thing, and I'm talking, for maybe years, if you don't nurture it constantly and take care of it and look after it, that thing will fucking kill itself.
Yeah.
It will crawl off a cliff and die.
It's like an infant for way longer than an infant should be,
Yes. It's like an infant and it's just wild that I didn't realize how much you had to take care of it and baby it and nurture it. And in my mind I'm thinking, well, $25,000, that's enough to nurture anything.
Right.
But it's not.
I mean, money almost became not real to me.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? It's like when that $15,000 payout would come in, and then we've never experienced anything like that, and then all of a sudden we're like, all right, well, $8,000 in inventory and $4,000 in marketing, and then boom, and then like you said, it's like, and then it's depleted, and then it's like, all right, well, it's gonna come back in and it's gonna go back out, and it was just like numbers on a screen. It's all digitalized in the ether. You know what I'm saying? And money became very skewed for me for a really long time. Like I was just like, whatever. And that kind of like that was a bad thing because it almost makes you not think about it like you should. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was pretty intense. But one of the things I did really learn more so about myself is that you have to overcome this like stagnation, because those highs can almost make you feel accomplished to the point where it's like, all right, well, now I could just sit back a little bit. But the more you sit back, the pile starts building of all the to-dos and the things that we need to do. And it was like, and that was also a good part about it though, because like even with building the website and starting email campaigns and doing social media and doing all this stuff, like I did really get a good sense of accomplishment by actually sitting there and focusing and putting time into it to actually completing projects. And we always kind of got a little bit behind in it, but we'd be like, all right, we got to buckle down, and we would. And those were great times of production, but it's very hard to keep that consistency. But like, I remember trying to build the website the very first time, and I sat down and like within 45 minutes, I was very just discombobulated, frazzled. And I was like, well, I'll try it tomorrow. And then tomorrow became a week, and then you ended up doing it, you know what I'm saying, because it had to be done. And then when we wanted to revamp it, I sat down again and I was like, all right, I can do this, I can do it, and I did. I sat down and I overcame that stagnation, that roadblock symptom where I would hit a roadblock and stop. It made me forge past the obstacle, and I think that was good for me personally, for like development in myself, I guess.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So there's a lot of little things that we learned throughout that process. But, I just say, if you're thinking about doing it, just go do it. Just go do it and fail, make the failures and do those things. Because now, like 2 years, on the other side of that, 2 years now, we have a whole completely different perspective than we did. And I think when I do it again, I'm going to come back to it with another level of experience that I'm going to at least try my best not to make the same mistakes that I did the time before. And that's a lot of them,
Yeah. Oh, it's completely changed my life.
Yeah.
And it's changed who I am, and it's changed what I guess I've always thought I was capable of those things, and of doing something like that.
Right.
But to actually get out there and the two of us to make it happen, it makes me realize like that's a possibility for me, and not only for me but for anyone.
Yeah.
And and I know right now I'm kind of stuck in this mushroom grow kit niche, but there's this realization that I could build a shop, if I could build a store for anything and just start selling it.
Yes.
And all it takes is finding that one thing that just hits, and it changes your life overnight.
Yeah.
And business itself has completely changed me as a person and pushed me to levels of stress, but also to be able to dig down to figure out how to deal with that stress. How
Yes.
do I manage it? What can I do to overcome the situation that's come up? And it has completely changed my life in that respect.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm capable of so much more. I've grown so much as a person,
Right.
through business and through doing it with you,
Mhm.
because like you said, there's so many obstacles that come up,
Yeah.
and you've got to figure out when an obstacle comes up, like, sometimes that obstacle is a make or break. Your business is either there tomorrow or it's not,
Yep.
whether you figure that obstacle out right then.
That happens so many times. Like
And yes, and that doesn't
balls
happen just
sucked up into my
once.
body.
Yes, that happened like 10 times.
Yeah.
And it's wild.
Yeah, they're
man.
formidable experiences. They really are.
Yes.
They're terrifying and they feel like shit at the moment, but like this old saying goes, this too shall pass. It does pass,
Mm-hmm.
and you keep moving forward, and as long as you keep going, it's gonna be okay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It really is.
And there's a sense that you're earning something too in a weird way. It's
Yeah.
like, even though you're so stressed out, that it's going, there's something greater that you're working towards.
Absolutely.
And it's that knowing that there's something greater that you're working towards, no matter how stressed out you are, always tends to keep you going.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you got to find is like, what is that greater thing that I'm working for, whether it's financial gains and personal gains, even just to figure out
Absolutely.
what's the best version of myself that I can be.
Yes.
And to discover that and work towards that. And business is a way of doing that. Spirituality is a way of doing that. Psychedelics are a way of doing that. There's so many ways that we get to sort of discover, how do I become the best version of myself? And I think it's when you bring all of those aspects together and it all becomes this one cohesive thing that you get to really kind of start to discover who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderfully said, man. Yeah, I totally
Thanks.
agree. That's awesome. Good stuff, dude. Really good stuff. This has been a very great conversation. Like, our conversation, once again, has not disappointed.
No.
Gonna kind of wind down this episode, but with this being cultivating you,
Done talking to me, man. It's kind of messed up.
the viewers can only stand your voice for so long.
That's
man.
fair enough. I am kind of annoying.
No, but with this being cultivating you, I always like to offer one last question so that you can impart a little bit of your knowledge or wisdom onto them and just talk about something, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, any one of those pillars, something you do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a discipline, it's a way of thinking, it's things that you enact in your day-to-day life that help you become a better person. Like, what's one specific thing that you could offer?
I think the thing that I've taken with me throughout for years, really from the beginning of my spiritual practice, and that I still use on a consistent basis, and I would say has become like a core of who I am. And I think anyone can do this to sort of find a little moment of peace, or to get themselves a little closer to themselves and to their truth, so to speak.
Right.
And it's a practice that Muji teaches, and that specifically I got from Robert Adams, and it's through Advaita Vedanta, and it's asking, who am I?
Okay.
And you can you physically do that, and usually you have your sense of I is usually up in your head, and so when you ask that question, who am I? And you can also do it the other way, which is you could also just say, I am. And you do it slowly. You go, I am. I
Yeah.
am. And when you're doing that, what you want to do is you want to bring that sense of I that's in your head, and you bring it to the right side of your chest. And you can actually either imagine the I physically going down from your head into the right side of your chest, your spiritual heart center, where you can just feel your sense of I, pulling itself down into that. And you can just take a moment in that, and you completely let all of your thoughts go. You stop thinking here, and you just try to be. And so it's just, I am. And then you just take that moment of clarity, that moment of silence where you feel that I go down, and you stay in that as long as you can.
Okay.
And it'll probably only be a split second, to be honest. It'll probably be maybe a second, and then you'll find yourself immediately thinking again. But you go back to that. And it's that state of peace when you feel your sense of I in your heart center that all of these gurus are essentially pointing to. It's a state of total calm, of total stillness. And you are completely present and completely in the moment. And there's no thoughts, there's nothing going on. And you can just be in that for a moment. And then sometimes if I'm really stressed out, or just even going about my day, I'll bring myself to that for a moment and just be completely present for a second. And if I could stay in that all day long, life would be amazing. Because when you're in that state, everything's brand new. It really is. When you're really there, you could be driving down the same highway you've been down 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
But in that moment, you're there for the first time ever.
Oh yeah.
Because it's, you're bringing yourself to that split second of existence that is brand new, that is ever emerging. So yeah, I think that's a practice that I would say I've taken with me throughout my whole spiritual journey and will take me throughout my whole life. And I think anyone can take with them to sort of get a semblance of peace. And not only that, but bigger than that, you can really start to bring yourself into the center of who you are, and you can get a little taste of what that's like. And you'd be surprised the rabbit hole that'll take you down.
That's awesome. That's beautiful,
yeah,
man.
it's
And
wild.
then while we're talking about that, Willow's decides to grace us with her presence.
Yes, thank you, Willow.
Well, man, this has been awesome. This has
Yeah,
really been amazing. I
great.
appreciate you coming on and
Yeah.
having this conversation with me. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Thanks so much for having me. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
There's lots more to talk about.
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that does it. Thank you for tuning in to the Cultivating You podcast. We'll see you next time. Much love. Center yourself and live your life. It's a beautiful thing. All right.
Peace out.
Peace.